Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to present my dissertation titled Illuminating Liminal Spaces, a phenomenological investigation of Hispanic students' first year experience at a four-year university with prior dual credits. My name is Rosalinda Ortiz, and I am a researcher practitioner here at the Hope Center. I started October the 5th, so I'm still new, and I'm just really excited to be here, and I appreciate you again taking the time to let me share my work with you. So, this is my research question that I started with. How do Hispanic college students who accumulated 30 or more dual credit hours from a community college experience their first academic year at a four-year university? I know it's a long question, but I've been following this group of students since their freshman year of high school when they started dual credit, and I've been doing research over them. So this was the culmination of what happened to them when they finally got to college. Did dual credit, in their opinion, pay off? So these were my students, 8 Hispanic students, self-identified, 5 male, 3 female, all from the same high school, all graduated 30 or more college credit hours. And like I said, it was based on previous studies. So I just want to give you an overview of the benefits of dual credit if you don't already know. So dual credit is actually when you take college classes while you are still in high school, and you get credit at both the college and the high school level. Every state will run their programs differently, and a lot of times, even within the state, their high schools run them differently. Some charge for dual credit, some give them free. So it just depends. But overall, through my research, these are the overall benefits. It increases rigorous college prep curriculum. It increases attainment of post-secondary degree. It reduces remediation because you can only take dual credit classes if you've passed your assessment to get into college. It introduces college expectations. It reduces overall, and I underline this, tuition cost, not overall cost of attending college, which we know the living expenses is really the most expensive part. So it helps the tuition cost. And it also accelerates progression to graduation. So for some students, depending on the program, they can usually finish their bachelor's degree in maybe 2 years or 3 years instead of the estimated 4 years that is said to take to graduate college. I want to show you overall my theoretical frameworks. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it, but basically what I did was I combined 3 culturally relevant models, one based on Nora's student engagement model, and you can see all of the colors with all the 6 different aspects of the framework. And then I overlaid that with Rendon's theory of validation and Yasso's community cultural wealth theory. So these are all culturally relevant frameworks to Hispanics, the Latino community. So that's what it looks like. You don't have to look at everyone individually. I just wanted to give you an overview. My dissertation was really long, and I had piece by piece information. So I want to present to you the findings. And since those were broken up into 6 different colors, these were the central themes. So I'm going to give you the findings for each one. The first one was pre-college pull factors and pull factors. So these are the things that might keep a student from even heading to the university or choosing what university they're going to go to in the first place. So based on my interviews with these students, they said they chose their university based on their wants and their family needs and desires. I think it's very much culturally based. We're a very close-knit community, Hispanic community, Latino community. So we care a lot about what our families think. What their input really has an impact on how we choose what colleges we go to. So a lot of times when they chose colleges, they chose to room with friends from home because they were familiar with them. They chose colleges that were close to home because if they needed to go home quickly or they wanted to spend time with their parents or their parents missed them, they could get them, within an hour or 2 hours. And they chose colleges based on parent preference. So even if they wanted to go somewhere far away, if their parent had fears or just issues thinking that they might not be safe, a lot of times the parents could convince the student that to go a little closer to home, especially if they had siblings that were going to be graduating right after them, so that they could follow in their footsteps. So those were the pre-college factors and pull factors. The second was sense of purpose and institutional allegiance. So how did the students feel about the major that they were in, and or the want or desire to complete their bachelor's degree and complete their bachelor's degree to at a specific institution. So for these students, all of them aspired to completing at least their bachelor's degree. Some really wanted to go further, but at minimum, they wanted their bachelor's degree. And a lot of them were first generation college students as well. So it was a big deal for them to go to college because it seemed like they were the ones that were going to lead the way for the rest of the family. Their commitment to the institution that they chose was based on what their academic majors offered, what if there was a family tradition like, oh, we always wanted somebody to go to UT, or we always wanted somebody to go to Texas A&M, or whatever their dream school might be. But that's how strong their commitment was, and it was really based on those three factors. The number 3, academic and social experiences. So this is based on, so what happened to them when they were in college? What was their first academic year like? So what I found is that, and I don't think this is a surprise, that positive experiences with faculty or staff reinforce student commitment. If they have negative experiences, they often retreated within themselves, retreated back home, or sought out other resources for support, which could have been their friends, family members, and they really, if they got burned one time, it was really hard for them to reach out a second time. They also wanted to keep the same hometown friend group instead of making new friends. Many of these students went to the same institution close to home, and they weren't really interested in finding friends outside of their already friend group. And they had low engagement of extracurricular activities unless it was required or encouraged by faculty peers. They really stuck to themselves and stuck to the people that they knew. Okay, number 4, cognitive and non-cognitive outcomes. So the things that they learned academically and the things that they learned, if you want to say that, personally, socially. So for dual credit students, they had this false sense of security. And this was semi-quoted, that like they knew college was going to be hard, but they didn't know it was going to be that hard. They really thought they had to step up because they were already in dual credit. So they thought college is going to be a breeze because I breezed through it in high school. And that was not the case for them. They also felt pressure to achieve the highest grades possible. These students were rock stars in high school because they were in dual credit programs. They pretty much got A's all of the time. They really didn't have to work hard to achieve high grades. And it was an expectation, well, if you could do college work in high school, you can obviously do college work in college. So there was a lot of pressure there. They had a lot of loss of self-esteem, which accelerated the academic stresses and feelings of inadequacy, especially the first semester of their university, because they were no longer the big dogs in town. They were little fish in a big pond, and it really was it affected their self-esteem, not only because it was their first time, they were first-time freshmen, but they were first-time freshmen in junior, senior level courses. So that really compounded their stressors. But luckily, they showed resiliency by the spring semester, and the way that they did that is because they used the learned coping tools from the dual credit program, like asking questions, seeking out support services, going to mentoring, talking to counselors, things like that. A lot of things that the soft skills they learned through the dual credit program, they were able to overcome it by the spring semester to really advance themselves and get over a lot of the pressures. But that loss of self-esteem and those pressures that they felt were actually higher than what a normal first-time freshman would experience, because first-time freshmen actually have those supports built into place already. So persistence, finally, did they persist to the next year? Well, all the participants in our study, or my study, were confident that they would continue their educational journey. 7 out of 8 confirmed that they would be re-enrolling in the same institution, and 1 participant left, but he still wanted to pursue his degree just closer to home because of a lot of family pull factors related to family and financial issues. So I think that rings true. When there are issues at home, it really stresses students out and they feel responsible to try to come back home and help fix the problems as well. So, what are my implications and discussions? Well, dual credit could alleviate some collegiate issues, but sometimes they might exacerbate others. So, it can have positive and negative effects depending on the student, depending on the major, and depending on the institution. Participants experienced all the first time freshman stressors, but issues were compounded by their dual credit program because, like I said, they were now little fish in a big pond, and they were in classes with students who had already been at the institution 2 or 3 years ahead of them. So it compounded those feelings of inadequacy. And then finally, dual credit did provide coping tools to overcome the academic issues, but not the social issues. So what does this have to do with hope? Here's what I think. And these are some questions that I'm going to throw back to you to consider, okay? This study was about Latinx students and about dual credit. So with Latinx students and their families, they're typically, like I said, a close-knit group. Their decisions are informed as a group with their family. So how does basic needs insecurities impact how students choose and or stay at the college and university? So think about that. If they already have these basic needs and security at home, and then they go to college, how are they going to overcome those basic needs and securities? Because their families can't help them provide extra money for that. How soon should students or families become aware of basic needs and security resources? Remember, they are high school students, but they're taking college classes. So they also might need resources for being in college and facing basic needs and security. How can basic needs and security knowledge or lack thereof impact Latinx students and families? So think about that. I mean, think of the resources that high schools provide for these basic programs like the McKinney-Vento or the free lunch program, things like that. Do these students understand that those programs are no longer available, or there might be variations of those programs in college? And do we address them in high school, or do we just let them figure it out in college? And finally, could basic needs and security compound the stressors for college students that are still in high school? And if so, how? So remember, they're going to high school, they're in extracurricular activities, they're doing their high school classes, their college classes. Some of them might be first generation college students. They might also be facing basic needs and security. So what else could happen to them? And then what would happen to them when they get to the university as well? So how can we at the Hope Center address some of these issues or consider some of these issues in our policies, in our practices? Because dual credit is a really big program and it's growing year after year after year. So it's definitely something to consider as to address some of these issues for students moving forward. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and I hope you learned a little bit about dual credit and my dissertation, and I'll take any questions you might have. Thank you.